Tim, you started talking about John Locke, and I think what that tells us is there's centuries of embedded assumptions and sort of discrimination around us here, and it's not going to change in one day. But I think what is really optimistic when you think of someone like him in the 17th century is that this reasonable man was indeed a man and was not a slave and was not a woman. And we've come a long way since then, and I think we can come a long way in this sphere too. I was in a seminar once with some really eminent researchers, and they said, look, all the research shows that the most significant differentiating factor proven to leading to better outcomes for adults with impaired decision-making capacity is to have a mother. That's what all the scientific research knows. That tells you what you know already. So, and we all know that mothers support and advocate for these people. So I listened to those stories of mothers, and one mother told me about her 29-year-old daughter, a very familiar story, couldn't get a contract with an electricity company, wanted the mother to sign the contract. The daughter couldn't speak on the phone, she had severe autism. So she had significant communication limitations in terms of talking on the phone. She lived independently. The electricity company wanted the mother to be appointed as a guardian, and the mother wanted to preserve that daughter's autonomy. So if you look at and in answer to the question about Queensland's legal framework, we've got the Article 12 of the Convention, but our Act says that there's a presumption of capacity, that as long as the adult has some way of communicating her decision, she doesn't have to communicate it orally to show capacity, that an adult's right to make decisions is fundamental to their dignity, that the capacity of an adult to make decisions may differ according to the support available, that the right of an adult with impaired decision-making capacity to make decisions should be restricted and interfered with to the least extent possible, right to adequate support for decision-making, encourages involvement of members' support work, the adult support work, and there are general principles for the community that the right of an adult that assert the right of an adult to respect his or her own human worth and dignity. And yet this woman had to go to the Anti-Discrimination Commission, and she had a bit of a win in the Commission in conciliation that they were discriminating against her daughter on the basis of her disability. But she was very disappointed that this was a confidential settlement and a one-on-one settlement with the Anti-Discrimination Commission. She didn't need to go there though. The other thing, I got out my contract law textbooks, and Gibbons and Wright in 1954, I think is still authority for the principle that even though each party to a contract must have that soundness of mind, that old-fashioned language, a contract for the provision of necessaries is enforceable. So a contract for electricity is enforceable against a person with impaired decision-making capacity, provided that they have the money to pay for that contract and the price is reasonable. So what risk is the electricity company really, assessing here? If there's even without capacity, they have to pay for their electricity. Anyway, I think I'm a strong believer in what's been said today, that I don't think it is legal frameworks. They can drive change, just as anti-discrimination legislation can drive change. But I've had a look at the Representation Act in British Columbia, and it is really complex. We've got a different capacity threshold, we've got monitors, we've got dual representatives, we've got reporting to agencies, and I don't know that banks and energy companies are really going to grasp something like that if there's no cultural change. And it's only been used in a very limited circumstance of people who, by the sounds of it, haven't got around to signing their power of attorney when they've got capacity. So I think the social inclusion is the most powerful tool, and I think that's what communication and active support was what you were saying. So I think that's what's really at the crux of it, and that sort of cultural change and people being able to see people with intellectual disability as full citizens. And I think we're starting to get that as people with political capacity. They can, we can understand voting and going to the Olympics, but I think that legal capacity and the risk aversion of these major commercial entities is a challenge yet to be met.
I work in the system, I have done for about 36 years. And what you need to understand is what we're talking about is replacing a system. And the moment we introduce systems as human beings, guess what? Invariably, anybody who's marginalised, vulnerable, will drop out. And we are very poor at implementing systems, and I have to say at a federal level, appalling. I go MyGov, I go NDIA, I go census. Okay? I'm getting calls at the moment, hey, how do I get onto the census? I don't have a computer. I'm living in a hostel supported accommodation, and the man who I pay to rent doesn't want to help me in that respect either. So we have systems that are failing us. Okay, and I'm not as confident in relation to those systems for my clients. Having said that, in a family situation, I reflect and I test those systems against what's going to work in my family. We have family members who have intellectual disabilities. They are supported 24/7 in the community, and we informally look after their financial structures, etc., and other decision making. But we do that using the informal structures in the current Guardianship Administration Act. I was a bit appalled with the Canadian scenario where you spend $8,000 to $12,000 on a lawyer. Take this the right way, Margaret. For something that we can achieve in Queensland for nothing. Okay? And only if you need to is the other critical issue. Only if you need to. I've been operating in that environment for 16 years, running investment structures, working with my family members and the rest of the family around that issue without a problem. For the first 5 years, I actually carried a prepared application for the tribunal. I threw it out. After 5 years, didn't need it, etc. Because we can sing and dance through the systems. The critical issue when you're looking at whether it's user-friendly is what's the learnability. That's where we have failed, in my view, around substitute decision-making, supported decision-making. The Queensland legislation actually says you have a right to support in your decision-making, and it needs to be adequate. Do you see any of that? It's about the learnability of how to operate in that system, and if you're me, and I live in it, and you've got those skills to operate in our society and those systems, you'll do well. You can duck and dance and dive and weave. If you don't have the skills, if you don't have that learnability in that system, you will fail. And the system will judge you for that failure. So we say, you've got choice. But if you don't have control of the information, if you don't understand what's involved, that choice is a fallacy. That choice sets families up to fail. And that is the gap in systems. And that's what we have in Australia, to my view. That is my concern around the NDIA. My critical issue at the moment for the NDIA is getting 6,500 of my clients into the system. Why? Because I want them to get something, whatever they might need that might be of benefit to them. But if they can't access it, if they can't have that planning, if they can't have that process of involvement in it, then you will get another failure. Systems are great. They have to be usable, and you have to be able to learn how to use them. And we, as a society, have to ensure that our people have those skills to operate effectively, and otherwise we fail them. There's my 2 cents worth.
Okay, thank you.